A monstrous creature slowly crept onto the shore. The woman glanced at her pocket watch, then calmly raised her crossbow in the monster's direction, despite not being able to see it at all. She fired a single arrow, killing the beast instantly. By some strange precision, the monster's body collapsed perfectly within a pre-drawn pattern on the ground. Without hesitation, the woman rushed back to the orphanage. She checked her pocket watch. Exactly 3 p.m. Acting swiftly, she led all the children outside and handed them gas masks. When she looked at the watch again, it was nearly 9 o'clock. As she raised her eyes to the sky, a fleet of bombers approached the orphanage right on schedule. Yet, none of the children flinched. It was as if they were used to it. One plane opened its cabin doors and released a missile aimed directly at the orphanage. The woman fixed her gaze on the pocket watch, counting down the seconds as if bracing for the world's end. Just 1 second before impact, she pressed the stop button on the watch. Instantly, everything froze. The falling raindrops, the missile hanging in the air. Then, she turned the hands of the watch backward. The missile and raindrops reversed course, flying back into the sky. Time itself began to rewind. It was then revealed. The woman possessed the power to manipulate time, creating an endless loop, a temporal sanctuary to protect the children from the horrors of the world. The story begins with an introverted boy named Jake Portman, who works at a superstore. He mentions that his life feels dull and unexciting. When one of his classmates visits the store, Jake tries to talk to her, but she shows no interest. Instead, his other classmates cause trouble by knocking things over in the store. Suddenly, the store manager approaches Jake and informs him that his father has called, asking him to check on his grandfather, as his mental health has been deteriorating. On the way, Jake calls his grandfather, Abraham. Abraham tells him not to come home, warning that it's not safe because the key to the gun drawer is missing. Jake tries to reassure him, saying it's probably a precaution for his own safety. However, Abraham insists that without the gun, he won't be able to fight off the monsters. On the way, Jake briefly notices a strange reflection of a man with glowing white eyes. Startled, he pauses for a moment but chooses to ignore it. When Jake reaches the house, he finds the place in complete disarray. It looks like someone has broken in. He immediately tells the store manager to contact the police. Meanwhile, he steps into the backyard and notices bloodstains on the ground. Following the trail, he is shocked to discover his grandfather lying injured. As Jake rushes to help him, he realizes, to his horror, that both of Abraham's eyes have been gouged out. Deeply shaken and panicked, Jake quickly calls the paramedics. In his final moments, Abraham holds Jake's arm tightly and urges him to leave, insisting he must go to an island. He explains that Jake needs to find a time loop dated September 3rd, 1943, where a bird will guide him and reveal everything. He admits that Jake probably thinks he's crazy, but assures him the truth will become clear soon, expressing regret for not telling him earlier. Moments later, Abraham dies, leaving Jake in shock and disbelief. Suddenly, Jake turns around and spots a bizarre, terrifying creature approaching him. At that moment, the store manager arrives, armed with a gun. Jake urgently warns her that something is right behind her. Though she can't see anything, panic sets in and she begins firing blindly. The sound of gunshots drives the creature away. When Jake arrives at his parents' home, he finds that his relatives have gathered to surprise him for his birthday. But overwhelmed with sadness, he quietly avoids everyone and retreats to his room. His older cousin follows him and hands him a book, explaining that it was found among Abraham's belongings and that it contains something meant for him. Jake opens it and discovers a message from Miss Peregrine, inviting him to Cairnholm Island. However, the note is dated 2 years ago. The next day, Jake visits Dr. Golan with his parents and shares the letter. Dr. Golan suggests that visiting the island might actually benefit Jake's mental health, as it could give him a sense of closure by honoring his grandfather's final wishes. A few days later, father and son set off on a trip to Cairnholm Island. Jake and his father arrive at an old hotel, over 100 years old, hoping to book a room. Jake briefly notices the hotel owner, an elderly man in a wheelchair wearing dark sunglasses, and finds something about him a bit unusual. The man welcomes them politely. Later, Jake tells Franklin they should try to find the old children's home. Franklin is doubtful that it still exists, but after some insistence from Jake, he agrees, though he doesn't go along himself. Instead, Franklin spots a few local boys and pays them to take Jake to the place if it actually exists. The boys lead Jake through a dense forest and point him in the direction of the old children's home, telling him they won't go any farther and he'll have to continue on his own. Jake proceeds alone, but gets stuck in a swampy patch of ground. He struggles and finally manages to free himself. Eventually, he reaches the ruins of the home, now completely destroyed. Back at the hotel, Jake asks the elderly owner about what happened to the children's home. The man explains that on September 3rd, 1943, during World War II, the Germans bombed the area, and everyone inside, including the children, was killed. That night, Jake tells Franklin about it, but Franklin dismisses it as a fairy tale and says there's no truth to any of it. The next day, Jake makes an excuse, telling his father he's going out with the same boys again. Instead, he returns alone to the ruins of the children's home. Inside, he finds everything in a state of decay. He sees old photographs of the children and a broken clock lying on the floor. While he's still exploring, a girl in a white dress suddenly appears in front of him. Frightened, Jake panics and tries to run. He spots two masked twins in white suits and assumes they're ghosts and panics even more. In his attempt to escape, he trips and hits his head on a brick, knocking himself unconscious. When Jake wakes up, he finds a small girl carrying him over her shoulder. She sets him down, and Jake immediately recognizes the faces of the children around him as he's seen their photographs and knows their names from the stories his grandfather once told him. He speaks to a girl named Emma, who can float in the air, and asks her if they're all dead. Emma assures him they're not, and neither is he. She explains that Miss Peregrine sent them to bring him into their time loop, and now he must follow them. They lead Jake to a cave that serves as the entrance to the loop. Nervous and overwhelmed, he quickly runs away. Back at the hotel, Jake tries to make his way upstairs, but the people there stop him. Unbeknownst to him, he has actually crossed into the date of September 3rd, 1943. The townspeople mistake Jake for a spy and nearly attack him. Just then, a boy named Millard, who has the power of invisibility, creates a distraction by throwing things in the bar. At the same time, Olive, who can generate fire with her hands, sets part of the area ablaze, giving them a chance to escape with Jake. They all return safely to the peculiar home, which now stands whole and beautiful, a striking contrast to the ruins Jake had seen before. The house has a lush garden and a grand, elegant design. Finally, Jake meets Miss Peregrine herself. Calmly smoking a cigar and checking her pocket watch, she stylishly welcomes him to the peculiar children's home, telling him he's arrived right on time. She begins sharing her knowledge about the precision of timekeeping, though most of it goes over Jake's head. Miss Peregrine then takes Jake to the kitchen, where Olive demonstrates her ability by heating a teapot with her bare hands. As Olive exchanges a glance with Jake, her boyfriend Enoch watches from a distance and immediately becomes jealous. Olive notices and goes after him to calm him down. Miss Peregrine expresses her condolences to Jake about Abraham's passing and tells him that before his death, Abraham had said Jake would eventually come. Jake recalls that his grandfather had promised he would find answers here. Miss Peregrine assures him she will help, though she admits that even she doesn't have all the answers. Just then, Fiona, a girl with the ability to rapidly grow plants, appears. Miss Peregrine notices she is 51 seconds late to the loop. Fiona apologizes and asks if they'll be needing carrots for supper. Miss Peregrine nods, and Fiona grows a giant carrot straight from the soil, which Bronwyn easily lifts, showcasing her super strength. Miss Peregrine explains to Jake that these peculiar abilities are inherited as recessive traits, which means not everyone in a family inherits them, only a rare few. She also reveals that she is a Yimbrine, a time manipulator who can create loops to protect peculiars from the dangers of the outside world. However, the price of safety is living the same day over and over again, without aging. She then introduces Jake to the other children. Claire, who has a sharp-toothed mouth at the back of her head, two masked twins with unknown abilities, Hugh, who carries bees inside his mouth, and Horace, a well-dressed boy who can see the future through dreams. As they approach Emma, Fiona interrupts to inform Miss Peregrine that the police have arrived to investigate the fire at the pub. Miss Peregrine scolds the group, asking why they had to set the fire in the first place. Jake steps in to defend them, explaining that they did it to save him. Miss Peregrine accepts Jake's explanation and forgives the children, a gesture Emma clearly appreciates. Later, Emma asks Jake for help with their daily task of releasing a squirrel onto its nest as part of the loop's routine. She asks him to tie a rope around her waist, explaining that when she removes her heavy lead shoes, she becomes light enough to float. Normally, Enoch helps with this task, but he's absent, likely due to jealousy, so Jake has to step in. He ties the rope securely, and as soon as Emma removes her shoes, she begins to rise. Jake holds the rope steady while she gently places the squirrel back in its nest. He then asks Emma if she knew his grandfather. She tells him they were very close. When Jake shares that his grandfather has died, Emma admits she already knows and mentions that Jake reminds her of Abraham in many ways. There's a quiet, emotional connection beginning to form between them. Back inside the house, Olive takes Jake to see Enoch, who wants to show him something. Enoch demonstrates his unique ability to bring inanimate objects to life by inserting a heart he's crafted. He puts two hearts into two dolls and they come to life, immediately starting a fight with each other for Enoch's amusement. Soon, it's time for dinner. Emma helps Jake get ready, explaining that proper attire is a tradition in the home. She decorates his coat with a flower plucked from her own hair. At the dinner table, everyone begins eating. Bees accidentally fly out of Hugh's mouth, and Miss Peregrine calmly instructs him to put them back. Jake also notices Claire swallowing an entire drumstick of meat through the mouth hidden at the back of her head, which amazes him. He's starting to realize how truly unique everyone here is. Enoch, however, grows jealous of Jake's presence and remarks that Jake will leave them just like his grandfather did. The comment upsets Emma, who once loved Abraham, and she walks out of the room in anger. Just then, Miss Peregrine receives a routine call from Abraham. It's the same one he makes every day within the loop, warning her of the Nazi attack that is supposed to happen later that night on September 3rd, 1943. Meanwhile, the children gather around to watch Horace's latest predictions projected from a device he wears over one eye. One of the visions shows a Yimbrine named Miss Avocet being captured by some dangerous men. Another vision reveals Emma and Jake about to kiss. Before the kiss completes, Miss Peregrine stops the projection and tells Jake she wants to show him something remarkable. She leads everyone outside to the garden. At exactly 9 p.m., they all put on gas masks as rain begins to fall, which is the moment the Nazi bombs are historically dropped on the house. As the plane approaches and the bomb is seconds away from impact, Miss Peregrine rewinds time. The reversal is beautifully cinematic, as even the raindrops lift back into the sky. The children, accustomed to the sight, watch without fear and seem to enjoy the spectacle. Jake finds the entire experience fascinating, and just like that, the loop resets and the day begins again exactly 24 hours earlier. Jake comes across a letter written by his grandfather Abraham, which was sent to Miss Peregrine in January 2016. Finding it unusual, Jake picks it up. Emma then takes Jake back to his original time zone by leading him to the cave again. Jake shows Emma his mobile phone, which impresses her, and they take a selfie together. At that moment, Miss Avocet arrives in the form of an injured bird. Emma picks her up and says she must take the bird to Miss Peregrine. Jake offers to help, but Emma insists that he needs to return to his own time zone first. Reluctantly, Jake departs. When Jake returns to 2016, he finds Franklin exhausted from searching for him. Franklin questions where Jake has been for so long. Jake explains that he was with some boys from yesterday. On the way, they notice that many sheep on the island have been killed and their eyes gouged out. Two of the same boys appear, denying they were with Jake that day, revealing to Franklin that Jake had lied. Franklin grows suspicious and confronts Jake. Back at the hotel, Franklin scolds Jake and tells him he will stay with him from now on. That night, Jake reads the letter he had secretly taken, which Abraham had sent to Miss Peregrine. The letter warns of a villain named Baron, who has discovered Miss Avocet's time loop and is coming to kill the children. Baron's next target might be Miss Peregrine's time loop. The letter leaves Jake confused and worried. The next day, Jake goes to the beach with Franklin, who is thinking about photography. Suddenly, they meet John Lemon, a professional photographer with advanced cameras, who is there for newspaper work. Franklin feels insecure because he only has a simple camera and believes he cannot match John's skills. Feeling dejected, Franklin returns to the hotel and falls asleep, while Jake uses the opportunity to return to the cave and then travels back again to September 3rd, 1943. Upon arrival, Jake immediately visits Miss Peregrine, who is treating Miss Avocet with medicine. Jake asks about the letter sent by Abraham and inquires about Baron. Miss Peregrine becomes angry that Jake read the letter without permission and abruptly leaves. Just then, Enoch arrives and asks Jake if he truly wants to know the truth. He takes Jake to Victor's room, who was Bronwyn's brother. Victor's lifeless body lies there. Enoch places an artificial heart into Victor's chest and Victor suddenly awakens. Jake is startled and runs away from the room. Downstairs, Miss Peregrine waits with the other children, telling Jake that it is time for their walk. As they walk, Jake asks Emma who killed Victor. Emma replies that Baron and his men were responsible on September 3rd, 1943. She then tells Jake she wants to show him something. Emma takes him to the beach where they board a small boat and reach the middle of the sea. She dives into the water wearing her heavy lead shoes, which usually keep her grounded, preventing her from floating away. Jake dives in to save her but doesn't realize Emma has another ability that she can manipulate water by blowing air through her mouth, moving it aside. Emma creates a bubble of air around Jake's head so he can breathe underwater. She then takes him to a large old ship resting on the ocean floor. Inside a hall on the ship, she blows air to remove all the water from inside and closes the door behind them. Emma opens a chest that belonged to Grandpa Abraham, which contains records of all the world's time loops along with pictures of Baron and his crew. She explains that Baron and his team are dangerous peculiars who invade time loops and kill the children living there. When Jake asks why they do this, Emma admits she doesn't know the exact reason, but suggests Miss Peregrine might have more information. Emma then decides to show Jake something else. They return to the ground, and from a distance, they watch as Miss Peregrine arrives at the beach with a crossbow, carefully noting the time. Suddenly, a monster appears. At the exact moment, Miss Peregrine fires her crossbow with perfect timing, and the monster is killed. It was the same monster that killed Victor back in the day. However, the truth is that neither Miss Peregrine nor anyone else can actually see the monster, but only Jake can. This turns out to be Jake's unique ability. Emma explains that Jake has inherited this ability from his grandfather Abraham, who could also see these creatures. In fact, Abraham had left the time loop to hunt them and protect the peculiars. Eventually, Miss Peregrine explains the entire backstory. She reveals that Baron and his followers once belonged to a rogue group of peculiars known as the Hollows, those who wished to escape the constraints of time loops and achieve immortality outside them. Many years ago, Baron had attempted a dangerous experiment in which he tried to transfer a Ymbrine's energy to others. The experiment went horribly wrong, transforming all of them into monstrous beings. Later, Baron discovered a gruesome solution that by consuming the eyes of peculiar children, he and a few of his followers began to regain their human form, though their eyes remained unnaturally white. However, some of his allies are still trapped in monstrous forms, and to restore them, Baron continues to invade time loops and hunt peculiar children. Just then, Miss Avocet returns to her human form. She informs Miss Peregrine that her own time loop was attacked by Baron and his men, and all the children were killed. She warns that Miss Peregrine's home is likely their next target. Alarmed, Miss Peregrine instructs everyone to start packing immediately. Though reluctant, the children begin preparing to leave. Jake asks Emma what will happen to the time loop if they abandon it. She tells him that the loop will collapse, and he will be trapped here forever. She urges him to stay with them, saying he belongs in this world. She reminds him that he is peculiar and able to see monsters and can protect them. She also points out that he has never felt truly happy in the outside world, so why not stay where he is needed? But Jake expresses his desire to return to 2016. Emma is saddened by this and replies that if he truly wants to leave, she won't stop him. When Jake returns to 2016, he finds his father searching for him. On the way back, they see a crowd gathered near the beach. It's soon revealed that the hotel owner has been found dead, his eyes removed. Jake begins to suspect that the owner was peculiar as well. Photographer John is also present and begins questioning Jake's mental state, noting that Jake had been missing all morning. Feeling cornered, Jake flees, and John follows him. Jake rushes back to the cave and travels once more to 1943. To his shock, John has followed him through the cave, only to reveal that he is not John at all, but Baron in disguise. Using his shape-shifting ability, Baron reveals that he had been posing as the psychiatrist who encouraged Jake to visit the island, all as part of his plan to access the time loop. Jake tries to resist him, but Baron overpowers him and demands that Jake take him straight to the peculiar home. Meanwhile, the children at the peculiar home are preparing to leave when the doorbell rings. Baron arrives with Jake held captive. He threatens Miss Peregrine, saying that if she wants to save her children, she must transform into her bird form and enter the cage so he can complete his experiment. Miss Peregrine agrees on the condition that Baron does no harm to the children. She sends all the children into the hall, unaware to Baron that Miss Avocet is already hiding there. Emma tearfully embraces Miss Peregrine, who bids a sorrowful farewell to her children. Just before transforming into her bird form, she tells Jake that he must now protect the children in her place. Baron then takes her away. Jake warns the children that Baron has likely sent a monster after them and urges everyone to stay alert. Together, they secure all the doors and windows. That night, the usual call from Grandpa Abraham comes in, but this time, Jake answers. He emotionally tells his grandfather that he is the best in the world and thanks him for everything before ending the call. Later that night, the monster breaks through the wall and enters the house. Miss Avocet tries to shoot it with a crossbow, but she misses. The monster retaliates with a powerful blow and kills her on the spot. Jake quickly sends the other children upstairs. Enoch attempts to fight the monster but is overpowered. Jake steps in just in time to save him. All the children then escape from the attic. Fiona uses her powers to grow tree branches, creating a path they can walk on to flee into the forest. However, Jake and Emma stay behind. As the monster approaches them, Jake manages to paralyze it using the crossbow. At that moment, Nazi planes begin to drop bombs. Emma removes her lead shoes just in time, and she and Jake fly away. The house is destroyed in the explosion, and the monster is killed. The time loop collapses. Later, on the beach, the children look to Jake for guidance and accept him as their leader. They ask what to do next. Jake tells them they must find the nearest time loop, hoping that Baron has taken Miss Peregrine and the other Ymbrines there for his experiment. Enoch raises concern about the long journey, but Jake suggests they travel by ship. Emma leads everyone to the old wrecked ship. The children work together to bring it back to life using their unique abilities. Olive ignites the fuel, others stabilize the engines, and the ship sets off quickly toward the nearest time loop. During the journey, Emma tells Jake that if they succeed in defeating Baron and his followers, he may have the chance to reunite with his grandfather. Jake then asks whether he will be able to see Emma again. Emma, saddened, reminds him that their time loop has ended, and they may not meet again. Before long, Enoch and the others gather around Jake to ask about the next step. Enoch mentions hearing rumors that Baron has stored his experimental equipment in the Blackpool Tower. Jake says they need to enter the loop at Blackpool before 4:30, before it closes, and shares his master plan that they must create a distraction. The group enters the bank of Blackpool and eventually locates the time loop, which is in the amusement park near the coast. Emma and Jake head to the Blackpool Tower, where Baron is seen discussing his plans with his followers. He boasts that this time he has captured multiple Imbrines and, if the experiment succeeds, they will achieve immortality. Jake and Emma create a diversion, and Baron sends his monsters and men after them. This marks the success of Plan A. The two of them lead the monsters back toward the loop. Jake signals to Enoch that it's time for Plan B. Enoch animates a skeletal army by placing artificial hearts inside amusement park skeletons. Meanwhile, the children throw snowballs and toffees in specific directions as instructed by Jake, which reveals the once invisible monsters. The skeletal army attacks and successfully defeats the monsters. Now prepared, the children launch their final assault on Blackpool Tower. Emma uses her breath to trap Baron, and Jake fires a crossbow at him, though the shot misses. Hugh unleashes bees from his mouth, knocking one of Baron's men into a pool. Another of Baron's allies, who has monkey-like traits, climbs up and attacks with knives. Olive sets Baron's clothes on fire, but he extinguishes the flames and overpowers her. Horace attempts to blind Baron with a flashlight from his eye, but Baron easily defeats him too. Baron then heads toward the experiment room with Jake and Emma following close behind. Meanwhile, one of Baron's men, who possesses the ability to freeze objects, grabs Bronwyn and throws her onto the pool, freezing the water above her. Fiona tries to restrain the man with her plants. Olive arrives and begins to thaw the ice with her hands, but the man breaks free from the vines and freezes Olive by placing a hand on her shoulder. Seeing this, Enoch acts quickly. He places a heart inside a massive elephant statue, which comes to life and charges at the enemy, defeating him and saving Olive. The other one of Baron's followers, having those monkey genes, tries to attack Claire and the masked twins, but Claire uses the sharp mouth on the back of her head to bite the woman's arm. Then the twins take off their masks and show their special power. When someone looks into their eyes, they turn to stone. The woman freezes, falls to the ground, and breaks into pieces. Olive is now completely frozen, and Enoch grows increasingly distressed. In a moment of vulnerability, he confesses that he has always loved her, even though he's never been able to truly express it before. Upon hearing this, Olive begins to regain consciousness, and the two share a kiss. Meanwhile, Emma uses her breath to push Baron aside and hold him back, while Jake rushes into the experiment room to free all the captive Imbrines. He manages to unlock them, but after a short while, Emma's breath gives out and Baron advances toward the room. As he enters, he discovers that Jake has already freed the Imbrines, effectively ruining Baron's plan. Just as Baron prepares to kill Jake, Emma and Enoch arrive with crossbow. In response, Baron uses his shape-shifting ability to take on Jake's appearance, creating confusion as there are now two Jakes in the room. Neither Emma nor Enoch can tell which one is real. At that moment, Baron's monster enters. The real Jake calmly states that he can see monsters, which is something Baron himself cannot do. Mistaking Baron for Jake, the monster attacks him, removes his eyes, and kills him on the spot. Jake then takes the crossbow from Enoch and strikes the monster directly in the face, killing it instantly. With this, Baron's plan fails completely, and all his allies and monsters are defeated. All the children begin making their way back toward the time loop. Before they leave, they say their final goodbyes to Jake. The mood is somber, as they know this is likely the last time they will ever see him. Jake tells Emma that the threat of the Hollows isn't completely over yet, and that they may still have to face danger in the future. Emma thanks him sincerely, saying that because of him, they've learned how to be brave and can now protect themselves. The two share a hug, and Emma, along with the rest of the children, returns to the year 1943, while Jake stays behind in 2016. Back home, Jake is surprised and overjoyed to find his grandfather Abraham alive. He runs to him and embraces him tightly. Jake shares everything that has happened, recounting the entire story. His grandfather, moved and proud, gives him a birthday present with some old cash from the 1940s. He encourages Jake to return to Emma, saying she is his true destiny. Motivated by his grandfather's words, Jake sets off on a determined journey. He enters the nearest time loop in California, which leads him to another loop in Tokyo. From there, he joins the Navy in 1942, spending a full year waiting and searching. Eventually, he discovers the same ship from which Emma and the other peculiar children are preparing to travel into a new time loop. Jake, having left everything behind, finally reunites with Emma, who greets him with a passionate kiss. Miss Peregrine, now in her bird form, is aboard the ship as well. Though wounded, she is content, knowing that her family is once again safe and together. And so this peculiar family sets off in search of a new time loop, bringing the story to a heartfelt close.